like some of us, I suppose those are memories I like to keep. Simply because I was lucky enough to go to a school that was not in a rural area, but very much on the edge of a big city. And we were fortunate in those days, it was still safe enough for us to be able to walk home after school without being relieved of our cell phones, wallets, money,
false teeth,
lives, false teeth. And yeah, so I ended up walking home from school every afternoon with a friend of mine, Jeffrey. Now, Jeff was pretty much the kind of guy that my parents wished I didn't know. He was the friend they were hoping I wouldn't have, because everyone, including the staff and at school, considered Jeffrey to be a bit of a rogue, a bit of a problem child, I think they call them today. No, today they've got a different label. They just call them now ADHD. They put them on Ritalin and then everything's okay. So when I was at school, we didn't have those labels. You were just out of hand, out of control. And so Jeffrey would accompany me on our way home. And because it was a rural area, we ended up walking past an old house every afternoon. And in this old house at the edge of the forest, there lived an old man, a recluse, if you like, who no one really saw too much of. He didn't have much. I suppose he was just living there and waiting. I'm not sure what he was waiting for, but I'm hoping it's not to die. But he was waiting. And one afternoon as we walked home, I happened to look behind me to see what Jeffrey was up to, because he was getting fairly quiet. And as I looked behind me, Jeffrey had bent down and he was picking up some stones. Before I knew what he was doing, he started throwing these stones onto the corrugated iron roof of the old man's cottage. And what kind of noise does a stone make on a corrugated iron roof? A hell of a noise, yeah. Good description. And the first stone hit and it made a huge noise. And the second stone hit and it made a huge noise. And as the third stone hit, the old man came running out of the front door, screaming and shouting at us. I turned to see what Jeffrey was doing, and of course all I could see of him was the trail of dust as he headed down the path. So I figured, well, I'd better follow. And because we were young and fast, we managed to get out of there. The next afternoon, I thought, well, I can't let Jeffrey be alone in this and take the lead on his own. So as we walked near the old man's house, I started picking up a couple of stones. And Jeffrey followed, picked up a couple of stones. And we crouched down behind some shrubs, got a nice throwing position going, and we let rip with the first couple of stones. And after the first 5 or 6 stones, still no reaction. So we threw a couple more. And after 15 stones had landed on the roof, still no reaction. And then our arms got tired. And so we got up to walk home. And that's when we saw him. The old man stepped up from behind a bush and some trees where he was hiding. He blocked our escape route, called us over. So we sheepishly approached, looked up at him. He put his hand in his pocket, took it out, and when he opened it, in the palm of his hands were 2 silver coins, one for me and one for Jeffrey. And in those days, that silver coin was just enough to score us each a soft drink and a packet of crisps. So now, instead of going home, we went past Nick the Greek's cafe, got a Coke and a chocolate, and then went home. Third afternoon, what do you think happened? Jeff and myself, down the path, what do you think happened? Collected a few more stones rained onto the roof. For all of 10 minutes, when our arms got tired, we walked up to the front gate, we waited. And the old man came out, and he put his hand in his pocket. And he took it out and he opened it, and in the palm of his hand were, we should be so lucky, 2 silver coins, one for me and one for Jeffrey. And you know what happened next. Weekend came, and we spent the whole weekend, Jeff and I, practicing in the back garden, throwing stones at dogs, at neighbours, at anything. Monday afternoon, goes, you know the routine by now. By now, the stones had run out where we were sitting, so we just imported some in a checkers bag. Instead of crouching down, we now stood up, because that gave us a much better throwing action. Stones rained onto the roof, walked up to the gate, the old man came out, put his hand in his pocket, took it out, opened his hand, and in the palm of his hand were 2 bronze coins. Jeffrey looked up at the old man and said to him, "Are you mad? You expect us to do all this work for this? You've got to be crazy. We're out here. Come, Erik, let's go." And we went home and we never went back. So let me ask you this. Why did we start throwing the stones in the first place?
Fun.
It was fun. Any other ideas? To get a reaction. It was mischievous. We got the adrenaline pumping a little bit. What happens if we get caught? Yeah. Why do you think we stopped throwing the stones? Before you answer that, why did you start throwing stones? And by that I don't mean literally throwing stones. I mean, why did you start in the career, in the job that you're in? I'm willing to guess because you thought it would be fun. To some extent. I'm willing to guess because you thought you'd get a nice return for your effort. But you see, the problem when we start equating success with what we get in return for our effort, and not just on the having fun and the adrenaline part, when that return that we get for our effort in our mind no longer equates the effort that we're putting in, we stop doing it. And so fun becomes work. And in that exact same way, Jeffrey and I threw stones because it was fun, it was mischievous, we got a rush from doing it. When we got the reward, it became work. And when the reward we got for our work no longer equated in our minds the effort that we were putting in, we stopped doing it. I think that old man was about 35 years ahead of his time. Because we're seeing those exact same issues happening in the experience economy today. Because Jeffrey and I threw stones for the experience. We ended up doing it not for the experience, but for the stuff we could get from doing it.